sorry for the hurt, I'm sorry for the pain. I'm sorry that I ever let you think that you could stay. I'm sorry I'm the worst for always playing games. I'm sorry I involve you in my 2 a.m. mistakes. This ain't fair to no one, you know this isn't love. I hate that I'm a person that could mess with someone's trust. I only want you when I'm wasted, naked and afraid that all the doors are closed and I'll end up alone. I only call you when I'm faded. I'm sort of ashamed that I let you pull me close just to let you go. Let's call it what it is, fill in all the blanks. Let's not make it something, boy, when we're not anything. Cause I can't anymore, I don't wanna lead you on. But I hate when my bed gets cold and I know it's wrong. At the end of the night when I'm feeling the liquor stall, I still call you and you don't argue. I only want you when I'm wasted, naked and afraid that all the doors are closed and I'll end up alone. I only call you when I'm faded. I'm sort of ashamed that I let you pull me close just to let you go. This ain't fair to no one, you know this isn't love. I hate that I'm a person that could mess with someone's trust. Ooh, no. I hate that I'm a person that could mess with someone's trust. I only want you when I'm wasted, naked and afraid that all the doors are closed and I'll end up alone. I only call you when I'm faded. I'm sort of ashamed that I let you pull me close just to let you go. I only want you when I'm wasted. I only want you when I'm wasted, naked and afraid that all the doors are closed and I'll end up alone. I only call you when I'm faded. I'm sort of ashamed that I let you pull me close just to let you go. I only want you when I'm wasted. See, I know just how you like it. At sunrise to midnight, all the sweet love in the morning, stripped down and up high. Home in summer when the bedroom light is fading. Only lovers know what loving really does. I don't mind the fall if you were falling with me. Only lovers know. It's a permanent summer, permanent summer. It's a permanent summer, permanent summer.
m'abandonnes. Je suis pas celle que tu crois, aucun cabron ne m'a touché. À part toi, caballero, non, personne ne m'a touché. Un jour le feu a pris nos hommes, parce que d'autres l'ont décidé. Et pour des gringos stables dans la cave, on sacrifie des destinées. La cocaïne a pris ma famille. Je suis une clandestina à Miami. La cocaïne a pris ma famille. Je suis une clandestina à Miami. Ne laisse pas ton odeur imprégner mes draps. Et si tu m'abandonnes, je suis pas celle que tu crois, aucun cabron ne m'a touché. À part toi, caballero, non, personne ne m'a touché. Un jour le feu a pris nos hommes, parce que d'autres l'ont décidé. Et pour des gringos stables dans la canne, on sacrifie des destinées. La cocaïne a pris ma famille. Je suis une clandestina à Miami. La cocaïne a pris ma famille. Je suis une clandestina à Miami.
All right. What's up, guys? Richie, I saw your message. I was trying to turn off this music and there's no way to do this smoothly. So here you go. It was an abrupt stop of the music. I wish I could learn how to do it so that it plays gently in the background, but we don't know how. So we're gonna just, I guess, slowly get going. And then as people start pulling up to the meeting, I will let them into the room. But I kind of don't want people to miss anything. But hi, in the comments, you guys, if you guys don't want to go on camera, that's totally fine. Although I would love to see you guys, because once I start sharing my screen, it'll be, I won't see anybody. I would love to say hello if I can, but if not, feel free. Hi, Inga, how's it going? I would, yeah, like just if you guys want to message in the chat, if you're indecent, like hell yeah. And if you guys want to ask questions, feel free to just unmute yourselves and ask, or text in the chat and ask. Also, I'll try to keep an eye out on that as we're going through. But okay, so I'll just tell you guys the format a little bit of how we do things. By the way, if my eye starts to just cry, that's because I put eyeliner in my eye and I poked myself. So now I can't see anything. So I'm going to try to see what I made on the presentation for you. But anyhow, how do I unshare my sound? I don't want to share that anymore. Okay, I don't know how to do that. So I guess it'll just share my computer sound as we go through the entire time. Anyhow, so the format goes like this. Typically what we do, you guys, as I'm explaining things, it's so funny, people are registering right now for the webinar and it started. So that's going to be interesting. As I'm saying things and you need to stop and ask a question, do it. It's a small group. So I want to keep it on a kind of like a question and answer informal basis so that everybody actually understands what I'm saying, because there's a ton of information out there for first-time buyers. And obviously I want to make it as interactive and fun for you as possible, as fun as a lot of dry information can be. So, okay, I'm going to get started. And maybe Helia will piggyback some of the stuff if anything. So now, how do I share? Okay, Google Chrome. Yes. Okay, you guys tell me. Oh, R is here. You guys can see my mega hits, right? Yes. But
Yes.
okay, good. And then, so last time when I was doing this, everybody could see my actual, like what I see on the screen. So people could see like the video of themselves and it was graying out. Is it not like that anymore? You just can see the screen right now. That's it, right? And nothing else?
I can see the buyer's guide to Toronto real estate.
But you can't see like the actual how it is with my Zoom, guys. Sorry for like the technical issues, but I just want to make sure that it's not like showing all the stuff that it's not supposed to be showing. But anyways, I think we're good because Ara taught me last time.
No, I see your tabs.
Yeah, you see
Is
my
that
tab.
normal?
No, that's not. I'm gonna, once I present it, there you go.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I just don't want you guys to see yourselves in here, so that if I want to open, so right now, for example, I opened the chat so I can see what people are saying. Is it blocking the screen for you? No, right? We're good?
You're good this time. It's all good.
Okay, perfect. See, I knew you taught me well. Okay, welcome to the Buyer's Guide to Toronto Real Estate. So we're going to talk about everything from A to Z. And actually today I wanted to spend a little bit extra time on pre-construction, just because we are going through a launch for pre-construction today. And maybe some of my teammates can jump in at some point if they wanted to. But in a nutshell, this is what your timeline looks like from the beginning to the end. Okay, very simplified. You're going to interview the team of the professionals that you're going to be working with. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to get pre-approved. This is a super important step that a lot of people skip and then they regret it. Decide the what, meaning what type of a property you're looking for and what types of things you want to see in it. And then finally, after all of this, this is where the fun time comes in. This is where we start shopping around with you for properties. And then we do the negotiations, which we'll talk about as well. And then, of course, win and celebrate, very integral part of the transaction, where we come with the champagne and pop bottles with you guys. All right. So I'm sure all of you are already sold on the idea of owning a home since you're all here, but let's talk about some things that I think you may not know about the benefits of owning a home. So first of all, it's forced savings. Okay. Your mortgage payment is like making a monthly payment into savings, but also you're living in it. So I have a lot of the people, this is something to also consider, that I talk to, who are debating between renting and buying, or continuing to rent and buying. And while they're renting, they'll say, okay, I'll save $1,000 a month to get to that ownership point. Well, we say that you're actually going to be spending more on your housing if you're renting and saving that extra $1,000 than if you were to have bought a place and got a mortgage, because typically your mortgage will be, so let's say if we're talking about a typical situation, somebody's renting for $2,000, saving $1,000. If you buy a place right now, that would be a 1-bedroom, your mortgage is probably going to be around just under $3,000, which is less than what you would do if you were saving once a month for $1,000 and paying the $2,000 to your landlord. But you'd actually be a lot better off, obviously, having your own place. Net worth increase is the second point that we have in here. Once you own assets, it increases your net worth, but it also allows you to borrow more money and invest again, right? So once you get a place, you can pull out equity and you can invest that into something else and continue repeating the process until you retire like a king or a queen, which we want to see you do, of course. Mortgage insurance. Again, this is an interesting point that I feel like a lot of people don't look at or realize. They think from a perspective of, oh, if I rent and I get sick and I can't work, well, I guess I'll move back to my parents' house if you have that option. But with mortgage insurance, you can actually, your mortgage insurance will pay for your mortgage if you lose a job or have a severe accident. Okay, this is something that you cannot do with the landlord, especially if you're in a term rent. Improving your credit and buying power, self-explanatory. Once you owning a home is because it's a credit, it will help you build your credit by paying it off every single month. And so your improved credit score will open up more opportunities and allow you to borrow more money and get more property. And of course, providing income. So if you have an opportunity to go somewhere, to go away for a while, you can rent out your place, have a tenant pay for your mortgage for you, and you're still growing in equity in your place specifically. All right. So if anybody has any questions about this, just message. I will be answering them as we go. So the first thing that you're going to want to do, as we said in our timeline there, is you're going to start building the team, okay? And we're going to start with the lawyer. The lawyer is a mandatory piece of the puzzle. Within Ontario, you actually have to have a lawyer to close on a transaction. I just learned that some people don't know this. You have to have a lawyer in order to facilitate a transaction in Ontario. So that's somebody you must have. The cost is actually between $1,500 and $2,500. Typically, you could get a discount lawyer if you guys want. There are lawyers that do these things for $800. We don't recommend it because we don't want you to get in trouble, because it is a serious purchase, right? It's probably one of the biggest purchases of your life. So you want to make sure that you don't cheap out on a lawyer to later end up finding out that there is some kind of a debt that's registered against your property. And now all of a sudden you have a $50,000 debt that your cheap lawyer didn't discover. So just keep that in mind. So this lawyer will do all the due diligence, will tie the whole transaction together. So at the end of everything, the bank actually sends your pre-approval and your documents for financing to the lawyer, and the lawyer will make sure that they close the transaction, and they actually are the ones who pass on the money to the sellers. Said that, important to work with the lawyer. Yes, this is super important, you guys, and I've experienced this firsthand. It is important to work with a lawyer who is well-versed in your type of transaction. What do I mean by that? If you are buying a condo downtown, potentially a lawyer that works in the suburbs somewhere far, far away and only knows how to deal with houses will not understand the market and the intricacies of condos to be able to give you proper advice. I've had this happen. They've scared off buyers with things that weren't necessary to be even worried about. And they don't necessarily understand the market here, which also makes them give a little bit skewered advice that they shouldn't be doing. I've had an experience with pre-construction where I had to change 3 lawyers myself because the lawyers I was working with were great in existing condo transactions, but with pre-construction, they were not as well versed, which reflected in their work with me. So we changed it, finally got a pre-construction lawyer who was phenomenal. So again, really, really important. Ask us for advice. We have tons of contacts for vetted professionals. So be it a lawyer, be it a mortgage broker, stagers, cleaners, even contractors, we have it all. Interviewing at least 3 is always a good idea for yourself. Okay. Fun fact, everybody always works with the first person they ever talk to, or majority of the people do that. You want to interview for your own sake so that you can establish a baseline and then work from there, pick the best person out of that. Fun fact that I wanted to note in here, lawyers owe fiduciary duties to you and the lender. So fiduciary duties means that they have to work in the highest and best interest of you, but also the lender. So if you're trying to do something sketchy or fishy, like a lot of people coming from overseas will say they've never owned property and there's not really a way for anybody here to find out. If you tell your lawyer about it, they have an obligation to tell about this to the mortgage broker. So just keep that in mind. Of course, lawyers available to answer any legal questions, but typically they get directly involved after you actually win an offer. Okay. Any questions about the lawyers? I'm going to give a second to you guys to message if you do, but like I said, we'll pick it up if we need to as we go. Realtor, my favorite part. So over here, realtors and mortgage brokers, you guys you don't need to have for a transaction. They're not essential for the transaction, but they are kind of essential for the transaction, if you know what I mean. So it doesn't cost you as a buyer to have the expertise of a real estate agent or a team. We like to say that teams are great because we are in a team ourselves, but that gives you a ton more resources and more hands and eyes on the same type of a deal for you. So whenever I have a buyer personally, my entire team knows exactly what my buyer is looking for, and they're on the lookout for this buyer along with me, which basically gets you extra hands on board, which is great. Is your resource for all the pros, like I told you earlier. So we will give you contacts of people you need if you need them. We give you, and you make sense of information that you see out there, because there is a lot, you guys. I'm sure you see it yourselves when you do your research. There's a lot of conflicting information. There's a lot of confusing information, and a lot of the numbers and charts don't make sense That's what we're here for. We're here for to make it a little bit more easy. We're here to make sense of all the stuff that you see. And because we're in the market every day, we really know what's going on. So it's really good to have us by your side. How to pick an agent. You want to make sure you check this person's and their team's reviews. You want to check their social media. You definitely want to research the brokerage and the team that they're on. Ask what area of expertise. So somebody that is going to be a generalist realtor, we're not against that by any means. If an agent works in every area of the GTA, that's fantastic. But we don't believe in that here at the Spring Team. We believe in specializing. Okay, so we pick an area. I, for example, don't necessarily go to Vaughan or to Brampton because I don't know those markets. So I know I'm not going to be able to service my clients there to the highest and best interest. And if somebody's telling you that they can take you to Hamilton, Burlington, all the different places under the sun, they are not necessarily going to be well-versed in that specific market. And we have gotten deals in the urban Toronto communities because agents have done that. So somebody would list a condo for a friend. They are somewhere in Ottawa, even sometimes we've had that. They list a condo downtown for a friend and they have no idea that the market has been shifting because they're not on top of the market in the area, and they sell it for significantly lower than what the market dictates. So guys, that's like something that does happen sometimes. It's rare, but we do take advantage of those situations. And when we do, it's good for our buyers. Asking if this person is full-time, super important. I've worked part-time in real estate for the first few years of my real estate career. And I can tell you right now, somebody who has a full-time job or a part-time job and then does real estate in the evenings or whenever they do it, they will, again, never be able to be in it immersively to tell you all of the intricacies of what's going on in the market. Okay. Ara also said, or they make their clients pay too much when representing buyers in markets they don't know. 100%. So I try to stay away also from markets that I don't know, just because, like I said, again, I actually owe my clients a legal obligation to work in your highest and best interest. So for me to take you somewhere where I don't know anything about the market would be doing a disservice to you. So we actually have a network of realtors that we work with, and we refer our clients to those agents if you want to go to a different area. Okay. So just something to keep in mind. Do you get along? That's a huge one, you guys. You're going to be spending a ton of time with your agent. So you want to make sure that at least you guys can have a good time together, because stressing and feeling negative feelings towards a person that you have to spend a lot of time with, of course, as we all know, does not turn out well. Again, same thing, interviewing several. The fun fact here is that 75% of buyers work with the first agent they interview. It's great news for us as agents, but you can see the flaw in that, I'm sure. If you are working with the first agent that you have spoken with, you're not necessarily getting the best because you don't have a baseline to choose from. Okay, so definitely interview several. We are confident that you are going to like us the most, hopefully. So definitely we encourage you to do that. All right, on to the next professional, the mortgage broker. This is huge. Again, same thing. They're not necessary, but they are great to have. And I would even go as far as saying, yes, they are necessary. So again, same thing. There's no fee for you as a buyer to work with a mortgage agent. Your realtor can suggest several options. Mortgage brokers, they are not necessarily tied to any specific bank. Okay. And so we actually recommend people work with a mortgage broker who is independent, who has access to all of the banks, rather than somebody who is working at the bank and is tied down to the bank. Unless you have specific incentives to go through the bank, maybe you work for the bank and you have the best deals there, or you have worked with somebody for 30 years in there, whatever the case may be for you, and you feel that the bank is going to do better for you, we strongly recommend that you're going to work with a mortgage broker, because same thing, They owe you as the client fiduciary duties. They don't get paid, just like realtors, unless you work with them and you actually secure a transaction through them. So it's in their best interest, of course, to also do a really good job for you. And they will answer you on evenings, they'll answer you on weekends, and they'll be available to you. Whereas with the bank, here's something that, again, a lot of people don't know with the bank. The mortgage position for a person in the bank is typically a transitionary position for a bank employee. That's number one. So typically they'll take like a weekend course and they will now be the mortgage representative for that bank. Okay. 2 years from now, when you need to refinance, that person may or may not be there anymore. So now you're working with somebody who doesn't know your situation, who you never met, but that's not even the biggest problem of it all. So they're not going to have as much knowledge as somebody who makes it their career. Okay. So people that we work in with in the industry for mortgage brokers, they've been in the industry for a decade or more, and they're well vetted. They've done tons of deals with us. They have systems in place. They're really accommodating all of the stuff, and they know little tips and tricks on how to get you the most amount of money from a particular bank. And they'll say things like, oh, for your specific situation, Scotiabank is a really good bank because they do da 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 da. They work with whatever, foreign buyers or something like that. For your situation, because you're self-employed, you should probably go with this different bank. So again, they will have these relationships. And also a lot of the times, fun fact, they will have a better rate from the same bank than your bank person will, because they've been bringing that bank a lot of clients, and the bank will give them the preferred rate. Okay, so again, just shop around so you know your options. We always recommend that. It's super important. Big purchase, you guys. So, and I explained what broker versus a bank is. Interest rate versus mortgage terms. Yes, let's talk a little bit about that. Is everybody still with me here, you guys? Just like message me in the chat, just so I know that everybody's still following and not sleeping and you're actually listening to what I'm saying. That would be very nice. In the meantime, I'll start telling you guys about the interest rate. So a lot of the people, what they do when they're getting a pre-approval, what they're really focusing on is the lowest rate. That is fantastic. However, what a lot of people don't know is that also there is another component to this, which actually may be more important than the actual rate. And the importance here is the terms of the mortgage. Specifically, what happens if I decide to move before my term? So the typical mortgage, you guys, is 5 years. That's your term and it's amortized over 25 to 30 years. But you have this 5-year term that you go into contract with the bank for. And for these 5 years, you commit that you're going to be paying them a certain amount, whatever the case may be, with your terms. If you break your mortgage, there are penalties. And so here is an interesting fun fact. Fixed mortgages versus variable mortgages, okay? 75% or so of the population that gets a mortgage goes for a fixed rate mortgage. Fixed rate just simply means that you're going to have the exact same rate, the exact same payment for the entire term. Typically, the fixed rates are more expensive. So because you're getting the peace of mind. So typically right now, I believe the fixed rate is going at like 2%. And let's say the variable rate is at like 1.5. Okay. So half a point less. And so then with the fixed rate mortgages, your penalty, if you decide that you are going to buy 3 years from now a different property or upgrade, they give you very insane penalties. People don't know this, and then they end up paying $30,000 to the bank to break their mortgage, which makes things a lot harder for them. Whereas a variable rate mortgage, it can fluctuate with the rates, but the penalties are significantly less. In the last 50 years, the variable rate was more expensive than the fixed one time. And yet 75% of people are still going with the fixed rate for the peace of mind. If that doesn't kind of give you food for thought, here's another stat for you. 65% of people who get a mortgage will break that mortgage in the first 3 years. what this means for a Toronto person or a Toronto couple typically is that your property has grown in value enough in the first 3 years for you to upgrade. Because as we all know, or maybe you don't yet, but I'll tell you, the starter home for first-time buyers typically in Toronto will not be your ideal home, right? We always say the starter homes for your parents or your grandparents may have been a house right away. Right now, a starter property for most people is a very small one-bedroom condo, right? To get yourself in the market, to get your foot in the door. But in the Toronto market, we've seen such incredible gains. We're talking almost 100% in the last, I forget if it was 5 or 10 years. I'm going to show you guys later. That like just the gains have been really, really crazy. That people are able to move up the ladder of real estate sooner. And because they're able to do that, they do still break their mortgages. So having said all that, you're very likely as a first-time buyer to not go for the entire 5-year term and actually upgrade your home in the first 3 years. So keep that in mind as you're doing that. Statistically, that's what we have been seeing. Unless you're absolutely sure and you really want the fixed rate, go for that. But variable rate seems to be the more prudent choice, yet people don't select that. If your credit isn't where you want to be, work on creating a plan with your chosen broker, of course, or financial advisor, 100%. Okay, perfect. I see that people are saying, yes, I'm here. Thank you for that. Okay, so yes, I just mentioned that. So 75% choose a fixed 5-year fixed term, which is more expensive on a monthly basis and a lot more expensive to break. But more than 60% of mortgages get restructured within the first 3 years. So we did talk about this. So keep that in mind. Ask your mortgage broker about it. And if a good mortgage broker typically will recommend a variable rate. So just know that. This is a little fun fact that I find super helpful. And this basically means that basically every $100,000 of a loan you get from a bank right now will equal approximately $400 a month in payments. So for example, this is just for you guys to do quick math when you are looking at properties quickly. This is a really easy way to know what the numbers will look like. So you're looking at borrowing $500,000 from the bank. You know that your mortgage on that will be 400 times 5, because $400 for every $100,000 of loan. So whatever $400 times 5 is, what is that, you guys? Whatever it is, can't calculate. You basically get the point. On the other side of this, I want to make this really clear because my friend freaked out at me when I told her this, and she's like, why did I not know this sooner? So on the other side of the spectrum of this thing here, if you are somebody who is renting, leasing a car or financing a car, or you have a line of credit or a student loan, and that loan is costing you $400 a month, that deducts $100K approximately from your pre-approval. So we always say to first-time buyers, same thing. If you're planning to get a car and a property, wait with the car until you get the property first, because that's going to allow you to get a little bit more of that loan. Okay. So again, any questions, you guys message. And now let's talk a little bit about down payments. Okay. So not a lot of people know that with the down payments, I need to turn this off because this phone is distracting me. I apologize. With the down payments, first of all, everybody thinks they need to get the 20% down. You can, because then you don't need to pay mortgage insurance. So if you have a down payment of 20% or more, you don't need to pay anything extra to the bank or to the housing corporation that basically insures your mortgage. If you have less than 20% of a down payment, your mortgage is now called a high ratio loan. When you have a high ratio loan, by the law or the regulation, I don't know if it's Ontario or Canadian, but you must have mortgage insurance. Okay. This mortgage insurance gets built in to your actual mortgage, but people are afraid of this mortgage insurance and they think that they need to save up to 20% in order to buy a property. You absolutely don't. And a fun fact about mortgage insurance is that the banks actually will give you better rates if you have a high ratio mortgage, meaning if you have less than 20% down. The reason for that is because they're actually guaranteed your money or the loan money if you default because you have that insurance. So not only are they lending you more money and you're going to pay them for longer and more money, they will also be guaranteed their money back if you stop paying. Okay, so that's why the insurance actually makes sense. And the bank will give you a preferential rate for that. If you have the 20%, because it's uninsured, the banks don't really have as much of an incentive to do that. So they'll give you a little bit of a higher rate. Okay. On top of that, we'll do a price breakdown in just a second, so you guys can see what the numbers actually look like when you're doing the 5% versus the 20%. Okay. So down payment is one of the two basically major cash cushions that you need when you are buying a property. So the first thing is the cash upfront for your down payment, between 5 and 20%, depending on the purchase price. So we'll talk about that. But the other cash that you need on top of your down payment is the closing costs. Okay. The closing costs they can go up to 8%, depending on the type of property, etc. So the biggest cost in your closing cash basically is the land transfer tax. Again, a lot of people don't know that inside the Toronto boundaries, we have a double land transfer tax. Okay, so the Toronto boundaries would be all the way up to Steeles and including Scarborough, including Etobicoke and everything in between that. Okay, all the way down, obviously, to the lake. So we have provincial and municipal land transfer tax. Outside of those boundaries, you only have the provincial land transfer tax. So you'll be paying half if you go outside of those boundaries. However, as a first-time buyer, you get a rebate on both of those, up to $4,000 on one and up to $100 on the other. Okay, so that is the biggest expense for everybody, is the land transfer tax. Again, I'm going to show you the exact numbers in a second. Legal fees are your lawyer fees, basically, that we talked about. There's adjustments in there. Adjustments is just typically not a very big expense. It's typically if like the seller has paid for taxes for the property for the entire year and you're buying mid-year, well, you as a buyer would owe the seller half of year of taxes. And so the lawyer does these adjustments. And then the title insurance, which you need to have. The next is the mortgage insurance. That's for basically anybody that has a down payment of less than 20%. And then you'll have also a home inspection for those of you who are looking into buying houses, townhouses, etc. Okay. With condominiums, you do not need a home inspection. And we can talk a little bit more about that when we do the Q&A. Okay, let's talk about incentives now for first-time buyers, because this is where it gets a little bit more exciting. So there are three major incentives that we have right now that make it a little bit more accessible for first-time buyers to get their foot into the market. Okay, right now there's political talk of the parties promising some other stuff, which we'll see what happens with that. Ara has a lot to say about that, so maybe we'll ask him at the end. But here's what you got. So the land transfer tax rebate is the first incentive. It's only applicable to first-time buyers. If you've owned anywhere else in the world ever before this, you do not qualify for this. But basically up to $4,000 for provincial rebate and up to $4,475 for municipal if you're buying in Toronto. Okay, that's the first incentive. The second incentive is using your money from your pension fund, from your pension account. Okay, so if you do not have money right now in your RRSP, the next thing you're going to do is tomorrow morning, you're going to put that money, go take $35,000 and put it into that account, because you cannot use it until 3 months have passed. So you're going to need to have it in that account for 90 days before you're able to use it. But what happens basically is you can take that money and you don't pay tax on it. But the caveat is that you have to repay that amount in the next 15 years. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you guys don't have this account, set it up tomorrow, because you'll need to have the 35,000 in there for 3 months. Again, if it's worth it to you. Equity sharing program. This is the third incentive that is offered by the government. It has now been increased twice. So the regulations for it, for people to qualify, have been increased twice, because the first 2 times it was completely not applicable for Toronto. Now they have increased the income requirement to up to 150,000. It used to be like $90,000 before. So now you can qualify if your household income is $150,000 or less, and your total borrowing is no more than 4.5 times your income. So just to give you guys an idea, if you're not using any equity sharing programs and you're just going through a mortgage broker, typically the bank will give you, they will lend you money 4.5 to 5.5 times, typically your income. So we always like to just keep it in the middle and say 5 times your income. So if you make 100K, you can borrow 500K. Sometimes they can stretch it to 5.5 times of your income if you have other things in your profile that are really, really good. Okay, so like debt to income ratio, etc. Now, with this incentive, you're limited to only 4.5 times your income. So again, this kind of blocks you from accessing certain properties. But what this program is meant to do is the government will basically give you up to 5% cash towards your down payment, so you reduce your monthly payments. In new properties, like new construction on the eligible homes, it can go up to 10% of extra cash that they give you, again, so that your payments will be less. Talk to us to see if this program is worth it for you. It's good, but if you really calculate it, like I would only recommend it if your other alternative is no home ownership at all. So with this here, when you're selling the property, you would need to give the government back the proportionate amount of the 5 or 10% that they've given you originally. So if you bought a property for 500,000 and you're selling for 600,000, now your 5% has increased. That amount is now 30K instead of 25K. So when you're selling it, you have to give the government back 30K. Make sense? I hope it does. Again, you guys can unmute yourself. I'm like, am I talking a lot? I'm going to have a sip of tea. Okay. After this dramatic break, moving on. Okay, so yeah, this is a good one. I found this from the website. This is a chart basically showing you what the payments look like with the home buyer incentive and without home buyer incentive. So what you want to look at is this doesn't even apply to Toronto because these prices over here, they don't really exist in Toronto anymore. But let's look at this. Even here, if you're looking downtown, you're probably not necessarily going to find anything here, but approximately this is closer to what our prices look like. So your monthly payment with a minimum down payment of 5% for 500K is $24.73. With the incentive where they add another 25,000, now your payment is $21.87. Okay, so that's a difference of like 200 and something bucks. Is it worth it? Don't know. Again, we have to calculate, sit down and do it together with you and look at your specific situation to see if it is or if it isn't worth it for you. But again, just so you know, I have to show you this to you guys. Okay, now we're going to finally do an example. I'm going to show you. So my team, the Spring team, we are huge on worksheets. What we do is we break things down for you specifically. So if and when we get together with you to talk about your specific numbers, this is what you're going to see. Can you guys just tell me that you see my screen though? Everybody can see this tool, right? Because I changed my tabs. Yeah, everybody's seeing it? Yes. Okay, perfect. So this is the type of thing that you're going to see. So I'm just going to walk you through this. I'm going to do it pretty high level, but again, if we need to get into something, just stop me and ask a question. So I've got client details here. First time buyer, yes. In Toronto, yes. Property sale price, let's say it's 600,000. Property tax is definitely not $6,000. Sorry, I was looking at a different size of property. Condo fees on a $600,000 home will probably be like $400 a month, and utilities. Okay, and then if we're looking at the utilities, maybe $100, maybe $50, something like that. But this is like this is what a rough profile of a property looks like. This would probably be like a 1-bedroom in Toronto right now. Okay, in the core. So for this price of a property, your minimum down payment is 5.83%. So I should probably take a moment to explain this to you guys. When we're looking at down payments, there is now a minimum that's set for people in Ontario. Okay, so anything that is up to $500,000 in purchase price, you need to pay a minimum of 5% of a down payment. So that would be $25,000 on the first $500. Anything between $500 and $1 million, your down payment becomes 10% now. So if I'm looking at a $600,000 property, I would need to have a minimum of $25,000 for the first 500. And then what's 10% of the other 100,000? That's 10,000. So now it's 25 plus 10,000, $35,000 minimum I would need to have to put down on a $600,000 property. Okay. If everybody's following along, good. If not, you can message in the chat or you can message me later privately and I'll explain to you. Okay, so we're working with the minimums down here right now. I'm putting what the current rate is. I think our mortgage broker messaged us earlier this week about it, saying that the rates were unchanged. So I'm keeping it at a variable rate right now, which is 1.5%. Amortization, 25 years. Okay, next. Now here's where the juicy part happens. Okay, so purchase price, 600,000. Down payment, 5.83% is pretty darn close to 35,000, but you get the point. Mortgage before mortgage insurance is 565,000. Okay. Now, because this is a high ratio mortgage, like I said, you need to get an insurance premium on this mortgage. In this instance, it's $20,000, which gets added into your mortgage amount. Now, before you guys freak out, if we use the same formula of $100,000 of loan equals $400 in payments on a monthly basis, 20,000 is like a fifth of 100. So what's a fifth of 400? It's like, I think it's like $80. So to be able to get into a mortgage today with like less money down, you'd be paying $80 more on a monthly basis, which is totally worth it when you look at the overall picture of not being able to get into the market for the next few years because you're trying to save for the 20% down payment. Okay, so if again, follow along with me, this $80, that this $20,000 would translate to $80 a month in payments. It's really not bad. Okay, and it gets added into your mortgage, so you don't need to even worry about it. The only thing that you do pay upfront for this is the actual tax on it, which we'll get to. So here's your first part. The second part is your actual closing costs. Okay, closing costs, here's your land transfer tax that I was talking about. Okay, so for the Ontario, it's going to be $8,500. And then for Toronto, it's another $8,500. Now, because you're a first-time buyer, you get a rebate of $4,000 in Ontario and $4,500 in Toronto. So your overall land transfer tax is $8,500. Okay, still it's a large amount, so just keep that in mind. But if you didn't have the first-time buyer rebate, you'd be paying the entire $16,000 or close to $17,000, and that's what people pay here. And the land transfer tax are pretty killer, so that is a huge cost that a lot of people don't know about, and it hits you at the end like a bag of bricks. So $8,500 you'd pay for your closing costs for your land transfer tax. A lawyer fee, we've put $1,500 here, title insurance for $400. So all in all, $2,000 for the lawyer. You don't need a home inspection on a condo. And here's that tax that I was telling you guys about for the CMHC premium, which is the insurance, this guy right here, the insurance for the mortgage. Okay, so $1,600. So all in all, for your closing costs, you'll need $12,000 plus the $35,000 that you needed for down payment. And your minimum amount that you need to buy a $600,000 property is $47,000. Okay, so this is the minimum. If you don't have that much cash or you don't have parents that can give you a little bit more, then we need to look at a little bit of a lower, like this is the entry level for this type of property. Okay, so if everybody's along on board, I'm moving on. Carrying costs. So your mortgage payment on that would be $2,300. The property taxes. So the property taxes, I just want to make a note here. I put property taxes at $3,000 here. I kind of went a little bit overboard here, but it doesn't matter. Usually it's going to be less for a one-bedroom property, but anyways, you can choose to pay this amount. This is an annual amount You can choose to pay it once a year, just the entire 3,000. You could choose to pay it quarterly, or you can choose to pay it monthly. So in this case, we broke it down into monthly so that you can see your overall cost of the property. Condo fees, your maintenance fees for a condo, and then of course your utilities on top of that, your electricity, whatever else comes in there. All in all, you're looking at just under $3,100 to actually carry this type of a property on a monthly basis if you have the minimum amount of money down. Again, if we reverse that back to the scenario where you are renting for $2,000, the first instinct for everybody is to say, I'm renting for $1,000 a month more. That $1,000 is a lot of money for me, yada, yada, yada. If home ownership is your ultimate goal and you're actually saving away for a mortgage or for your down payment every month, and you're putting away $1,000, you're going to be paying the exact same amount, except in this scenario, you would be also building your equity and your property is growing in value. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, this is a fun little page, the down payment comparison, okay, because everybody always wants to know this. So over here, what we have gone ahead and done, we compared the minimum down payment to all the increments in between and to the scenario where you have the 20% down and you don't need the mortgage insurance. So I like to look at the first and the last typically, because that'll give you the biggest basically difference. Okay, so here we want to look at these numbers here and these numbers here. All right, so the scenario we talked about where you need a minimum down, that's $47,000 and your total carrying costs are $3,100. In the scenario where you don't get mortgage insurance, your down payment or your closing cost, your entire cash upfront that you need is $80,000 more, $80,000 more, but your monthly payments are like $400 less. Okay, so the question here becomes, is it worth it for you to either wait and save that amount of money to get to a $400 discount a month? And in this instance, if you're waiting, the market has also appreciating. That's another thing that people don't take into consideration. The property that's worth $600,000 today, this is the new entry level for condo buyers in the urban Toronto communities. If you're outside like Scarborough, North York, other areas, it may be lower. But again, so your old $499 is now $599. That's where the pricing is going. That's where we are. So if you're waiting another 2, 3, 4, 5 years to save up for this $130,000, well, now this $130,000 gets you a much smaller unit, if not pricing you out completely. Now, if you do have this amount, you have $130,000 and you're thinking, okay, should I be putting the entire 20% down or not? The question becomes, do you have something else that you can do with this money? For example, invest so you can diversify yourself and make more than $400 a month return on an $80,000 chunk of money. Okay, so that's the question that only you can answer. We can't answer that for you, but we're here to give you these facts. Okay, so I really, really hope that this part was helpful. Again, you guys, if you need to go through this a little bit more in depth with me, one-on-one, I'm more than happy to do it. I'll break this down for you so it's super clear. Okay, now we're gonna go on to the next page. Okay. So once we've done all of this stuff, if everybody's still with me, we've done all of these things, we figured out your financing, you figured out your team, you know what you're pre-approved for, you decided whether or not you're going to do a full 20%, you're going to do a minimum down or something in between. Now we sit down with you, and what we do at the Spring Team is typically we meet people in person, but what we'll do is we'll give you this notebook. We have these spring notebooks with pens that we give you as a gift, and we're going to use that throughout the transaction. And what you're going to do on there is you're going to basically doodle your top must-haves and deal breakers. Super, super important to understand what's a must-have versus a nice-to-have versus a deal breaker. Okay. Must-haves are things like location, number of beds, baths, minimum square footage, if you need parking, if you need a locker, like school zone, public transportation, local show, etc. Okay, so these are the things that you cannot change or are very difficult to change. So let's say you're buying a house and it only has the one bathroom, but you need two. You can add a second bathroom, but the headache for that is unnecessary, where you can just be looking for a property with 2 bathrooms. I hope that makes sense. Things that are nice to have are certain amenities in the buildings, like pool or jacuzzi or smart home capabilities, like things like that. Don't get stuck to it. And that's why we actually don't even ask you to write this down, because when I'm looking for properties, I'm looking for very pragmatic things, like specifically must-haves and deal breakers, because that's what's going to allow me to get the most properties for your criteria. And so again, then deal breakers are things like being on a main street. My condo faces a main street, and I'm not going to lie, sometimes it's painful at night. If I want to open the balcony, I can hear the traffic outside. And if you're a light sleeper, that could be a deal breaker for you. If it needs too much work and you guys don't have the opportunity or, you know, the means to do any renovations, then obviously we want something that's more what we call turnkey, being near train tracks, etc. Again, we can talk about the typical deal breakers for a lot of people, or things that will make it harder to sell down the road. That's a conversation we have with you, but this is super important. So you're going to write this down and you're going to rank it in order of importance to you. What we do after, if you have a partner, your partner is going to do the same exercise. You're going to combine your lists together. Again, this is really important. Families have been kept together throughout this process. This is crazy. So you're going to combine your lists and you're going to make it a top 10 between the 2 of you, so that you need to agree on your must-haves that are most important to you and your deal breakers. And then what we do is, because we're in Toronto, we remove the last 3 criteria completely. Okay. So what this does, you guys, I'm going to go back here, is it makes the search pragmatic. Okay. This is super important, because when we're going to places, I can't, and for any agent in here can attest to this, you will have a client who has seen so many places that they, you know, when you smell too many perfumes and you can't smell anymore, it's one of those. You'll walk into a place and you might be in the wrong state of mind, or you had a bad mood, or you got into a fight with somebody. You walk in and you see a scratch on the wall and it turns you off and you don't want to be there anymore. Or it smells like food that you don't like. You walk in and you completely dismiss a property that could really work for you, and it checks off all the boxes because you saw a scratch and it's such a minor thing. So us going back to this checklist really helps, keeps us on course. Alternatively, again, realtors in the house will have attest to this. You have clients who walk into a property that's totally wrong for them, completely not what they were originally saying, completely not what we know is going to work for them. And they fall in love with something funny like a kitchen island, and they want it. So again, this just helps us keep everybody on the right track, so that we are, and again, these things are not set in stone. If you guys want to change some things on it as you go along and you realize that, oh my God, like this is not as important to me as I thought, no problem. But all of us being on the same page is huge. And also it helps me narrow down properties for you. So very, very big exercise. This has been a very huge reason for success for us. Now, we've seen a bunch of properties. By the way, I started doing this thing with my clients. I don't know if you guys agree or not, but started doing this thing where when we first come out or we first start to see properties, we'll build a baseline. So we'll go out and see like 10 properties without zero, like with no intention of submitting any offers, just for you to build an understanding of what is out there. So it gives you an idea, oh yeah, like this is a good property within this price range. This is a bad property within this price range. So you have a baseline, but you're going with no intention of submitting an offer. And then after this baseline of 10, we start going and seeing places aggressively, which means that if you see a property that's better than all the properties you've seen at your baseline, you should be putting an offer. Of course, if it also matches all your criteria. That's also such a good, it's something I read in the book. And that's how computer algorithms actually work. And there is a proven percentage for that to work really well. So fun fact that I learned. Now we're on to negotiations. So we have seen a bunch of properties together. You fell in love with one. And now we need to decide what is going to be our strategy. So typically with negotiations, guys, there's going to be 2 major scenarios you find yourself in. You're either competing against other people or you're not competing against other people. Just a heads up, in Toronto, you're very likely competing against other people. And we're actually just heading right now into a market where it's going to become quite competitive. So just be ready for that. So in a situation where you are competing with people, okay, the property's been on the market, suddenly you decide to put an offer, all of a sudden 3 other offers show up. In this instance, there's a couple of things you want to do. Number one is you're going to look at the comparables. Okay, so we look, are we in an uptrending or a downtrending market? I'll tell you if we are or we aren't. Typically in Toronto, we're in an uptrending market. And I'll say, okay, we're in an uptrending market. The most recent few comparable properties that sold in the last 2 weeks, they dictate such and such a price. If you're competing, you'll want to give the highest price of the comparable and maybe even a little bit more. And depending on how many offers, we then decide how much more we can give. Okay. That's probably the biggest thing that actually makes or breaks things. However, there are 2 things for condos specifically, and 2 things for houses that are your contingencies that you typically submit with an offer. So normally you'd say things like, okay, in a normal market somewhere else, okay, where things are not as intense and competitive, somewhere in the States, let's say, you would say, okay, I like this property, I'm going to submit an offer, and then I'm going to need 5 days to talk to my bank and see if they're going to be able to get me financing for this. And then I'm going to have my lawyer review all the legal documents for this condo if it's a condo, or I'll bring a home inspection if it's a house. An inspector, he's going to take care of everything. He's going to take a look. And if everything checks off in the next 5 days, I will waive these conditions. And now we're what's called firm. Okay, so I just kind of jumped over to the not competing situation, but that's what happens in all the other markets or many other markets outside of Toronto. Okay. So then the seller will say, sure, you guys negotiate the price, they accept, and then you have 5 days to do your actual due diligence. And if everything checks out, everything's clean, bam, you can remove these conditions. And now you're firm, which means at this point, you cannot back out. And now you're waiting until the day you get your keys. Now, in a competing situation, you don't have the luxury to do that. Okay. In Toronto specifically, people do this. First of all, they offer more money than the last comparable. They get their lawyer to review the status certificate before they submit an offer. We have lawyers that do this in a couple hours, so we can get the turnaround really quick. And they get their financing in advance, which is why we do the financing in the beginning. Okay. But what we do specifically the day of, we see a property you like, you say, Mila, I think I like it. Right away, I'm going to send the listing to your mortgage broker and ask, how far can we push with this specific property? So I know that, let's say the property is worth, I apologize. Let's say the property is listed for 600,000 and it's actually worth like 700,000, and you can afford to go all the way up to 800,000. Well, we're not going to go for 800,000. We'll come in at just slightly above 700,000, 700, 705, 710, however many offers we'll decide together. But we know we have this much cushion for you to compete if it goes there and if you want to do that. If your pre-approval and your mortgage broker says, I'm only comfortable with you going up to 705, and beyond that, you're going to need a mortgage condition, well, then we know that we are out of the competition once the competition gets to 705. Okay. So again, this is super important. We do all of this in advance before submitting the offer. Sometimes what we even do, we'll keep the closing date section blank. And we allow the seller to fill it out so they can say, yeah, I want you to get the keys. I want to get rid of this in the next 30 days. So in 30 days, you're moving in. Deposits. So deposit versus a down payment. Okay. When you're submitting any offers, you have to give a deposit with the offer. Typically it's 5%. If you're competing, people will put a little bit more. And I've highlighted this word here called herewith. Okay. Normally you would submit and it will put upon acceptance for the deposit. And once they accept, you have 24 hours to deliver the deposit. In a competing situation, again, you absolutely don't have to, but if you want to stand a chance, you will go to the bank, get a bank draft, take a picture of it, submit it with your offer. And if they accept, I'm going to go pick up this check from you and give it to the agent of the seller the same night, because that secures the deal for them. Price, we already talked about. Some people write a letter to the seller. We say it's not really necessary unless there's a specific circumstance where you really want to do it or you feel like you'll connect with the seller. In Toronto, typically people are very much more number oriented, so it's not necessary. And as a joke, I put, you can also sell them your kidney. So I hope you guys are giggling for that. And I hope this makes sense, but this is a very important part of our negotiations. And this is where the deals, a lot of the deals, most of the deals that fall apart, they fall apart right here, okay? And in Toronto, in general, people, when they get into these negotiation situations, they get very competitive and they get stubborn. The sellers get stubborn and so do the buyers. And they can break a deal over a $5,000 gap between the two. Do you know how much $5,000 is on a monthly basis? When you break that down in your mortgage, it's like, I don't know, like $8 a month. And over this, people lose a deal. So we just want to make sure that we take all the emotions out of it and we're pragmatic. And again, like I said, we look at all the numbers in advance. We know if you can go up to 720 in this instance, then we can push up to that point if you want to. But if it gets personal, that's when things get messy. Okay, so work with your agent. Hopefully it's us to establish a strategy to get the most out of your offer and have the best chance of getting and accepting. Don't let emotions get in the way. That's a huge one, you guys. Even though everybody says that they're not going to get emotional, they do. And people get upset all the time and get offended with the seller. So we'll have these conversations. And another thing to note, multiple offers happen all the time. No matter how long a property's been on the market, sometimes something sits on the market for 45 days and then no offers. And we think, oh, this listing is so stale, like we can go and compete and negotiate. And we submit an offer and all of a sudden there's another offer. And the strategy will completely change when we are submitting an offer by ourselves versus when the moment we start competing against somebody, the strategy is totally different. So keep that in mind and focus on the numbers, not the emotions. Okay. So now here we talked about the conditions and the firm offer. I brought that up a little bit in the previous situation. Conditional offer is when you're submitting an offer with contingencies. Okay. So basically it is what it is. If they get accepted, then you have a few days to actually figure things out, take your time, and then either back out or go firm. And in the situation where you're firm, you've already done your due diligence. At this point, you're just doing all the little things like you're switching the address on your documents, you're registering in the building, you're setting up your utilities, you book movers and cleaners, etc. But something that we didn't mention here is that what we always add in our offers is a clause that says that the buyer has the right to revisit the property a further off 1, 2, or 3 times. And the reason we do this specifically is for the one visit that we save for the day before that you get your keys. Okay. So if you look at the legal agreement, the seller warrants that all the systems and appliances will be working, which means we go the day before and we check, we turn on the taps, we open the windows, we turn on the microwave, the stove, the fridge, the laundry, the dishwasher, and we check that everything's working. Because if it isn't, we can go back to our lawyer and say, hey, something's not working, hold back the money until they fix it or give us money back. So they then renegotiate this. If you find out that something is broken the day of or after your money has already been sent, appliances are typically they're not super expensive, like $1,000, $500 for an appliance. Chasing the lawyer of the sellers for this $500 is so not worth it. And it's actually a lot more painful when the money's already been transferred. So we do that in advance. It's, again, some agents don't do this, which boggles my mind, but we always want to do this because, again, that is where we work for you and work in your highest and best interest. Okay. And then obviously the home stretch is finalizing the financing with your lender. Make sure that the mortgage documents correspond to what you agreed to with your lender prior, because sometimes mistakes are made. So this is the time for you to finalize and double check these things. And then the final walkthrough we just talked about. We're ensuring that anything everything is up as agreed upon. And after that, you get your keys and we celebrate. In the meantime, you guys, between the moment that you're firm and the moment that you get your keys, you will typically have some sort of a time frame. So like, I don't know, 15 days, 30 days, 45 days, 90 days, whatever the case may be. In that time span, what people don't know is that your lender will check your documents at this point here, once you become firm, and one more time before you get your keys. If in this time span of 30, 45, or 60 days, you have decided to buy a car, get a loan, go and buy furniture on credit, your numbers will change and you're going to be financially liable to make up the difference. So don't do it. Okay, we've had people have to pay money that they were not expecting to pay because they made that mistake. So we always want to be super clear about this. You don't change your financial situation, no cars, no loans, nothing until you get your keys. The day you get your keys, bam, you can go do whatever you want. Okay, so at this point, we celebrate with you guys, we bring champagne and we party. So does anybody have any questions about the process overall? That was from the beginning until the end, what we're looking at. Everybody's okay with everything? I'm just gonna assume that we are. And now we're gonna quickly touch on pre-construction versus resale. Okay, so for first-time buyers, again, pre-construction, difference with pre-construction and resale. Let's talk a little bit about pre-construction. Pre-construction is great for you to get into the market if you cannot get a mortgage or don't want to get a mortgage right now for whatever reason. Because with pre-construction, you just paying the deposits at a set intervals. So typically what happens with pre-construction, you will basically sign for a specific layout that you decided on, and then they will have this deposit structure. Right now, the deposit structures for pre-construction are delayed, which is making it a lot more accessible for people to enter the pre-construction market. So like we just launched the pre-construction this week in Distillery, and the deposit structure was 5% when you're buying, the next 5% 4 months later, the next 5% like a year later, and the next 5% 2 years after that. So very, very delayed, gives you a ton of time to collect the money. However, usually the first two are the closest in time span. Most pre-construction projects will have them 90 days apart rather than 4 months, like we said. Okay, so just keeping that in mind. Now, what a lot of people don't know about pre-construction is that pre-construction costs more than existing properties. This is like against the grain for a lot of people for some reason, but we haven't seen pre-construction be cheaper than existing properties. I have never seen it in my career because I think maybe Ara knows about this. If it was ever cheaper than resale, probably was back when, I don't know when, maybe 10 years ago. But right now, what developers do is they'll price the properties with a projection, with a projected price forward, basically. Yeah, so Ara is saying that the pre-construction used to be cheaper in 2011. Bam. So since 2011, that's 10 years ago exactly, it has been more expensive than existing condos. So here's what happens. It is more expensive because it's more accessible to get in. It's easier to buy and to actually get your foot in the real estate market when you're getting pre-construction. There's also other perks when you're not a first-time buyer. And that is because if you own a property already and you want to buy a second one, with existing properties, you need to have 20% down. With pre-construction, you're doing 5% increments, again, makes it super, super accessible, but it is more expensive. So people, again, freak out. So like, for example, right now you can get a 1-bedroom for 600, probably even less than that, like high 500s, mid to 500s, all the way into the 6s. And of course you can go for more. With pre-construction, you're looking at 700,000 and more. Okay, getting a pre-construction 1-bedroom unit right now for under 700 is a steal. So things like that to know. Or another example I like to give is right now downtown prices are between $1,000 and like $1,300 per square foot. That's kind of the range. If you're looking at pre-construction, you're looking at more like $1,400 to $1,800 per square foot. And even there are some that are $2,000 per square foot. And we know with pre-construction, it's a great way to see where the market is going. So keeping tabs on that is great. So you know if you're buying a unit somewhere, or in the distillery, let's say, because we have a pre-construction distillery, you're buying it for like $1,200 per square foot. And then the pre-construction in the same area is selling for like $1,500 per square foot. Well, you know, your property is going to grow to that amount. And it kind of makes it a little bit easier to stomach the prices. But that's basically it. If anybody has any specific questions about pre-construction, you guys let me know. I think we are going to do an entire webinar on pre-construction because it seems like there's lack of understanding in that sector. So we will definitely do that. Yes, the up and coming areas. Let's talk a little bit about the up and coming areas. If you want to get into the diamond in the rough type of a scenario that's going to have the most growth possible, you need to kind of stomach the idea that you might be in an area that is going through changes right now. So it might be not as great right now, but it will be in the future. So typically those are the up and coming areas. And Ara is writing Kingston Road, yes. Kingston Road is the biggest up and coming area right now, as well as anything that's like downtown east side. So even like Regent Park, even like that area south of there, the Distillery District, Corktown, all those areas, and out even more east into Kingston Road. All of those neighborhoods are getting a ton of construction. They're getting gentrification is happening in there, which means the population that's coming in is like a higher income type of population, which is driving up the prices. There's going to be more amenities, more grocery stores, more construction, more people living in there. All big growth operations are east side right now. Yeah. So somebody was asking me today if they should be looking at pre-construction in Mimico. And I said, look, you can look wherever you like. You're going to do well anywhere. But if you want to maximize, go to the east. Okay. Again, we have access to this type of stuff. If pre-construction is the way for you, message any one of us and we will tell you what's available and what's up and coming and kind of give you a better breakdown of that. But that's kind of a high level overview because I don't want to take too much of the time. I also pulled these market stats for Toronto on there 5 years ago. Remember I was saying in the beginning, the growth in the last 5 years for condos in the GTA has been 80%. That's 15.95% per year. Okay. Was that an even 15.95% every year? Absolutely not. We had a 24% year, and then we had like a 5% year, and then we had like a 2% year. But when you are buying a property, you need to understand that you're buying for a longer term, and over the long term, it averages out and it always goes up. Okay, this is for the single family. And then if you look at the different time spans, so this is 12 months. Okay, this shows you different numbers, 6 months, different numbers, depending on where the market is at that time, at that point in time. Okay, so here I did what is this? This is from 2000. So 21-year average of the Toronto. So what is this? Toronto and all municipalities, composite meaning all of the property types, and Toronto area, all of the areas of Toronto. So this basically gives you a very general overview of what the market looked like from January 2000 all the way up to right now. Okay, this thing right here is what we use as realtors called it's like a statistic thing that we have on our back end that we are able to access. So this gives us actual live data. Okay, so this is what it looked like. And if you look, even when we had those dips, when people were freaking out, it came right back up and surpassed that. So overall, when you're looking on a longer term scale, you're always winning. That's the fact in Toronto. So this concludes the presentation. I know this was a lot of information, which I told you guys, I warned you in the beginning. This is the time for you to ask your questions if you have any. And in the meantime, I'm going to get off of this screen sharing. And I see Inga stayed on camera the whole time. Thank you. I actually didn't see myself the entire time, so I didn't even know what's been going on. Helia, Ari, you guys want to go on camera and say something? Maybe not. Maybe
I have nothing valuable to add. You did a really good job. That was good.
Okay, that's helpful. Did we miss anything about pre-construction or first-time buyers?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, I try to cover a lot of stuff. There's a lot to learn, you guys. And for first-time buyers, I know that only 30% of this information will probably stick, but that is why I throw as much as possible. So then the 30% is bigger and more stuff actually sticks. All right. So, well, okay, then I guess. Oh, there, we got a question. How do construction mortgages, own land, getting a mortgage for a new build differ from the mortgages we talked about? Amelia, thank you.
You're talking about mortgages for like buying the land and then getting money to build something on it. That's what you're talking about?
I'm not sure. But, oh, okay.
I mean, those are very different things. When you're buying land, you can't usually get a traditional mortgage for that sort of thing. Usually, if you are buying land with, and wanting to build something on it, you'll have to get something like a construction loan that isn't necessarily all released to you all at once. It's released to you when you reach certain progressions in your construction period. So, it's pretty complicated, and you're never eligible for the best interest rates. Usually, you're not going to the A lenders for that sort of thing. It's usually private lending or B lenders. But yeah, I mean, it's really just a big difference in interest rates. It's a big difference in how the loans are set up, and it's a big difference in who's lending it. Like, you're not just walking into a CIBC and just getting all this done. Usually you're going to like a home trust or like one of those alternative lenders that are open to more risk. So really the biggest difference is your carrying costs, because your rates are going to be a lot higher, and it's going to require a lot more cash from you.
And this is, you said that this is for the vacant land. So if somebody wants to build their own house and they are buying just vacant land, this is what they have to do.
Yeah. Sorry, a raccoon just fell out of this tree over here. Oh shit.
It's hilarious. You guys, if you want to join this conversation, it's always epic when Ara is around. So here you go.
Raccoons don't always fall out of trees when I'm talking to you. Huh?
Very true, but there's always something.
Anyway, does that answer the question, Matthew? Cool.
Yeah, I think that answered Matthew's question, but I think we have a little bit of a shy group in here today. Usually we get lots of questions, but it's okay. Totally cool, you guys, no problem. We're, like I said, anybody on the team, myself, of course, also we like doing this. We like doing the education piece. I really enjoy doing this. I'm a teacher by like my first love passion or life passion was teaching. So I love doing this, and I'd love to have a one-on-one with each and every one of you if you have questions. Matthew was unmuted. Matthew, were you going to say something? Maybe not.
I think you just fried people's brains a little bit. So maybe let everybody do their thing, and you can do a Q&A. Just do a Q&A one time. That's it. Oh,
that's actually a good one. Maybe we'll do a Q&A session. We get a bunch of people in there. Sounds good. Alrighty, you guys. So we're going to call it a night then. I have a call to get to also. So, and we still are launching this project in the distillery. So it's been a little bit of a nut house with that. Yes.
You sold 2 units today, I think. So that's pretty good.
Yes. And Ara messaged me and said that his fingers are swollen from texting.
Yeah.
All righty, guys. So I'm calling it a night. I'm also like just a little bit tired here. So thank you very much for joining, everybody. Really, really appreciate it. I hope you found value and enjoyed it. And we will see you next time. And we'll send you the replay tomorrow. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Ara booked it real quick. I'm closing it now.